The bands that continue to push forward in creative directions without succumbing to a format deserve more recognition. The UK's Enter Shikari take that style of post-hardcore and submerge it into electronic rock. On the band's sixth full studio album, Nothing Is True and Everything Is Possible, the group take their sound into experimental territory through a wild concept album. I was late to the game with Enter Shikari, as the first album I heard in full from them was Spark in 2017. However, I say this to both longtime Enter Shikari fans and first listeners, this new album is intentionally different than what the band has done previously. Nothing Is True and Everything Is Possible is pitched as being a lucid soundtrack with poignant social commentary. Rao Reynolds also would describe the album as having layers and asking what is truly possible in a world filled with questions and uncertainty, especially in our current state. Everything I just said about this is intriguing, but you also need a seatbelt because Enter Shikari will not take you smoothly from point A to point B on this ride. In true experimental but narrative form with plenty of style changes, this album is hard to nail down in a one-sentence definition. Even the singles that were released aren't able to truly advertise what you are getting in the full album. On top of that, it's a band who is capable of making something unique in a good way. Many music fans in 2020 are ready for any type of adventure. This musical is worth diving into across 15 tracks, none of which cross the 4-minute mark. It's a themed album with lots of style changes, many instruments, gorgeous orchestral sections, electronic beats, and everything in between. I'm gonna do my best to go through the tracks individually, but fair warning, this is an album meant to be one long-running operatic-style playthrough. Like I said before, you'll need a seatbelt at points. The opening song, The Great Unknown, starts with the line, "Is this a new beginning?" And that track has just a hint of style from the Killers. The electronic keys and drums with Rao's vocals have a great effect and it's a memorable start. Lyrically, there are hooks galore and it feels like a sense of desperation in the delivery. The electronic side of Enter Shikari is shown well here. Crossing the Rubicon changes speed a bit, combining an upbeat rhythm and vibe with slightly distorted vocals alternated with a high vocal delivery. This song has the band come in a bit more on the instrumentals, especially in the drum track, and the title delivery is infectious. Not as striking as The Great Unknown, and it does succumb to a bit of 90s alt-rock feeling after a while, but it still works well. We then get to the Dreamers Hotel, and this is where the sound starts to change drastically. The performance from Reynolds is a bit fiercer in the verses to a digital beat, going then to a fantastic chorus with a bit of flair. This was the first proper single for the album, and I see the appeal for it as a good advertisement of the album. But there is so much more in this album besides the Dreamers Hotel that this song doesn't even feel like the true standard of style throughout. The experimental side starts coming out more and more as the album comes on, and the story is just being set up. It's such a hard album to describe. Waltzing Off the Face of the Earth Part 1 is a true step-for-step rhythm with deep horn sections and a build in volume. It completely changes the tone and sets up the next phase of Nothing Is True. You start appreciating the lyrics more at this point because the connecting written sequences start setting in. Modern Living definitely feels like a 21st century soundtrack. This is living is a motto and phrase, but so many dubby drops and more of the spoken delivery as a hip-hop electro-rock combination doesn't do the song too many favors. It's definitely not boring, but man, it's a ton of elements in a music blender and it doesn't all blend well. The following song, Apocalypse Anonymous, main theme in B minor, sweet mercy, some of these track titles, is more wubby-dubby distortion and a slow but chaotic beat for a minute, then a high-pitched digital voice comes in. Completely unnecessary. The Pressure's On changes the style up again to a lower noted but bouncy style, and it's a breath of fresh air after two pretty insane tracks. It's the insanity where Enter Shikari fall off a bit, but where they get their focus back, they greatly excel. Fun guitar riffs, high breezy vocals, this is nice. After a slow 46-second interlude, Tina begins in the full electronic side of rock, and this song is destined to be remixed to in a dozen dance mixes. Good writing throughout in dialogue form, and the dance beat gets you to move in the beginning. It's fine admittedly, but the novelty does wear off about halfway through in the repetition. However, it still works well. Elegy for Extinction comes in as the symphonic grand stage play song, and it's quite lovely. It's another track where no one probably expected it from the band, but it's another nice thing to hear, and it helps refresh everything. We then get to the Marionettes Part 1 and 2. Part 1 is the story and concept again in dialogue form, and it starts as a transition from the symphony stage and goes into EDM effect boards. Two very polarizing styles smashed into each other. Lots of wub and dub. Part 2 has a deeper beat in the verses and the intense delivery into an uplifting and motivating chorus. Our minds are fireworks. There is solid ideas and phrases here, but through these marionette tracks, the music behind it transitioned oddly. But after those two parts comes the best 1-2 punch combo in the entire album, starting with Satellites, opening with the line, "I wish I was a comet." This is by far one of my favorite tracks on the album and is the best example of electronic rock fused perfectly. The verses and connections are great and the chorus is fantastic. The mixing is clear, it's a song that gets into your head instantly. I love this. Then comes The King and it revolves around Reynolds shouting, "I used to be the king." Much more of the electronic side, but it works here and it's the ending of a big narrative about realizing possibilities truly are endless, but we don't need others to help us with that, and sometimes possibilities can overwhelm us. It's a heavy electronic and distorted track, and it's great. And finally, we get Waltzing Off the Face of the Earth Part 2 with a great instrumental section from the orchestra glitching into something solid and Reynolds fading out singing the song title. The album closes sweetly after a wild trip. Everything I just said about each song still does not equal a whole recollection and discussion on everything in the album. In many ways, this is one of the hardest album reviews I've done in a while because there's so much to break down and so many style changes. But upon first listen, I went from, "What is this?" to, "This is great." And I kept coming back to it, especially the second half of this album. Parts of it frustrate me, but I admire the majority of it. Overall, Nothing Is True and Everything Is Possible is a bold entry in 2020 and stands out even for the catalog of Enter Shikari. It makes you appreciate taking electronic styles of rock and then incorporating forms of orchestral music and wild digital mixing to make something strong. It's an album that defies explanation, but after a full listen you'll be compelled to go back and see how Enter Shikari made something seemingly impossible possible. What did you think of Nothing Is True and Everything Is Possible? Leave a comment and let people know, and vote in the YouTube card in the top right corner of the video. Big thanks to my patrons and a special thanks to Brandon Barenfeld, I Love Metal, and Dom Smith. You can help support Rocked and keep this channel going through Patreon. Just $2 a month goes a long way, and you can have a say in upcoming videos and you can see videos early. More information in the video description and YouTube cards. Please subscribe, it helps a ton to get noticed on the YouTube search algorithms and you'll stay updated on upcoming videos. You can check out my concert photography on Instagram and you can keep up to date with Rocked on Facebook and Twitter.